Welcome everybody to the Microsoft 365 platform community call. This is our weekly Tuesday call, which we keep on executing throughout the holiday season actually as well. So just actually on that topic, and just a teaser for the 23rd. I think it's somewhere in the 22nd or 13th as well. On those closer to the holiday season, we're not planning to actually have demos on those calls, but what we're planning to do is still keep the call. So let's have a joint coffee, tea, whatever you choose to drink moment, and hang within within here for 1 hour. So we can have a discussion around the future of .NET as an example, which was an interesting discussion as we started this call. Now, that's a teaser for something what is happening in the latter part of December, but now it's still in November. So it's November 23rd, and let's get moving on today's agenda. So we'll again cover some of the latest updates and news from Microsoft 365 platform. We actually have the monthly updates as well today. So we have collected all of the people and companies who contributed within the past month within our open source efforts. We're, by the way, moving to a more frequent listing with this one, or that's the objective. So we get the bi-weekly listing of all of the people who are actually contributing, because it's good to be quite a lot of people who are actively involved, and it's better to get those people mentioned, appreciated openly more often than once a month. Now, we'll also do a quick together mode picture, and then Parag is going to talk about introduction to SharePoint on-premises Microsoft Graph connector, and that's really interesting hybrid setup with Microsoft Graph. And then Waldek and me, we're going to talk about the last module in the Extend Microsoft Viva Connections section, or a learning path, which is around extending Microsoft Viva Connection with application customizer. Relatively simple scenario again, but it's good to cover those learning paths, or that's the intention what we want to do within this course. So we cover those learning paths together with you, so you can ask questions, and then if there's any things we need to jump into and clarify, we can talk about those as well. Quick Q&A happens typically throughout the call in the chat. Now, quick recap on all of the assets. I know that there's a lot of assets. I'm going to be super fast in here, but basically 2 YouTube channels where you can find awesome videos getting published all the time. A lot of open source assets. Do not start from scratch. Go and have a look on what kind of samples are available for you to take advantage. And if you're wondering that there's too many assets and URLs to remember, it is actually one URL, which is the AKMS M365 PMP. From there, you can download the community call invites and access documentation, tooling, SDKs, samples, and all of that stuff. So that's really, really cool. Now, one thing what we always keep on reminding on this Tuesday calls especially is our Microsoft 365 developer program. You will get a free E5 developer tenant with 25 accounts, and as long as you use that tenant for developer purposes, it will automatically renew. So there's a certain level of a so-called anonymous instrumentation. So we do not look into the content, but we analyze if people are actually doing development in that tenant, and it will automatically renew if you're using that with it for developer usage. And there's a lot of awesome stuff in these tenants nowadays available. Example content, example structures, 25 accounts, all of that stuff. And now it's with a instant availability. So they are pre-provisioned. So you actually get a ready-to-use tenant in a matter of minutes, which is super, super cool as well. Something what we always also promote in these courses, that's the right way of saying that, is our learning paths. So the easiest way to get started on the Microsoft 365 platform is to go to our free Microsoft learning paths, which are telling you how to get started. They are super polished, hands-on labs included, how to get started on extending Microsoft 365. And we will cover one piece again today in here, which is to extend Microsoft Viva Connection from an application customizer perspective. That's the latter part of today's demos, but really, really good asset already available. And these are free, which is a super, super good thing as well. So you can easily access them from any location. Now, there's also a lot of samples available in the sample gallery. We are already in the 650 samples, actually, so the amount of samples is growing quite significantly. We are going to make an official announcement about the sample gallery quite soon. It's been a bit delayed because we want to make it a polished, but now it's getting to the right level. And we keep on adding samples. This is a gallery where you find community samples and Microsoft provided samples from one location. So rather than being forced to go to the GitHub and trying to find the right sample, what you're looking for, you can go to a single UI and use the search box like in Google to find the relevant sample for you. And it's working surprisingly well. So I'm actually super impressed on the work, what we've done in here. And please also provide us feedback around this one. If there's areas which you want us to improve or something is missing, please let us know so we are able to improve that. Now, I will show this slide to David. I think you're ready to go to explain what sharing is caring is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vesa. Well, friends, as Vesa just described, we have lots of samples, lots of resources, lots of opportunities for you to collaborate in the community, whether that means utilizing these resources or even contributing back. But we understand that there may be some hurdles that prevent you from getting involved, something like, I don't know, how to traverse GitHub, how to submit samples back into GitHub, how to use those samples. There's a lot of moving pieces to all of the resources we have, but we don't want you to feel like you're left alone to figure them out. Sharing is Caring is a program that's going to walk you through how to utilize many of these resources and contribute back live, hands-on in sessions with members of PNP and members of the community. They're not recorded. They're safe space opportunities to collaborate, ask questions, get involved. So we've got a number of upcoming sessions and topics. Our newest, of course, is the Power Platform samples and the ever popular AMAs. In fact, 1 week from today, we've got one on MGT with Sebastian Levert. So come and sign up for any of them. They're all free of charge. Again, hands-on safe space opportunities, aka.ms/sharing is caring. Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David, on that one. Now, moving on the slides, because we want to get to the demo sections as well. Just a few reminders again. You want to certainly check out the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast. The latest episode actually was released today, where Paul and Jeremy are talking about the latest news, what Microsoft has provided around the Microsoft 365 platform from Ignite around the November timeframe. So really good, nice podcast episode for sure. The second podcast, which actually had also latest episodes released today, is the PNP Weekly, where we talk about the latest in the Microsoft 365 platform as well, typically with a visitor. So we focused on career paths and community contributions and what people are doing. So introducing people of the community, so MVPs and program managers from Microsoft. And the latest one was with Catherine, released today. Now, a few news from the Microsoft side from last week, and there was actually five main news. So 3 from the developer platform side, and so there's a Go developer SDK now available, which will make it easier to do development with Go language and with Microsoft Graph. So that should help you if you're looking into using the Go language within your development to make the authentication and access to Microsoft Graph APIs in a more easier way. Then there was a really nice, bit longer than 1 hour, a video from Rabia and Bob related on Microsoft Teams development, all you need to know. And that's actually pretty good achievement if you can actually cover all you need to know within 1 hour. So that's a pretty interesting time investment for sure. But Rabia and Bob are super professional about this topic, so I wouldn't be too surprised if that is actually the case. And then we have the third blog post from last week from Dan Wallin, which is developing real-time collaborative apps with Azure, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and GitHub. And this is a live event which actually happened a few weeks back. Can't even remember the exact time or date because time is flying when you're having fun. But there's like 4 different videos or 5 videos. So the event has been now split to a smaller set of videos so that they're more consumable and they don't take too much time. If you're looking into, for example, understanding what Azure Fluid Relay would actually mean for developer experiences in the future. Then there was 2 new blog posts in the Viva blog related on Viva topics. So first of all, and these are both from Matt, and the first one is kind of an introduction on Viva topics at Apps on Success. So it talks about the different scenarios and opportunities what the Viva topics actually provides. And then the next, this kind of step number 2, it's the initiate, where we go forward and start actually creating and utilizing the Viva topics inside of the company. So a really good blog post, a lot of assets available from those blog posts also related on the Viva topics use cases. Now, I mentioned this one already as we started. So the November update is coming quite soon as a blog post, available later this week. But we already collected all of the people who've been contributing within the last month for our open source and community assets. And it was, again, a lot of people. So first of all of the external people, we're not going to call you out one by one, because that would actually take the full 60 minutes of the day. But again, we were forced to split this into 3 different slides. So a lot of people who've been actively involved and contributing with samples, documentation updates, and all of that stuff across the Microsoft 365 platform areas. And some of them, thank you for noticing, Eric. So FDAF is actually a really good person. He has helped a lot on the community. But the thing is, if the GitHub profile doesn't have a name, we can't really call them out with the name. So we need to call them out with the GitHub profile alias. And that's what you're seeing for some of these names and some of the aliases. Like I said, a lot of people within the past month being actively involved across multiple different companies. And I'm using a font in the size 9 because just making sure that I think 10 that was too big already, so we had to use the 9, even though there's some space on the slides as well. But thank you everybody for being actively involved in the community. And this is the list of companies which we have a name or permission to show as part of the companies who've been actively involved within the past month with their employees contributing on the Microsoft 365 platform areas. So thank you for giving your employees the opportunity of being involved and helping others in this open source community. Really cool. And of course, a lot of people also in the Microsoft side of the house. So not going to spend too much time in here as well, but we are seeing more and more people and activities from the Microsoft side as well, which is great. So we are growing the open source community side of the house as well. Now, before we go to the demos, we'll do a quick typical setup, which is our together mode picture time. So let's all be like Sebastian Levert. That's going to be hunting down Seb now for years, because that was such a good clip, which I was able to actually get from there. Let me flip us to together mode. Let me start the Camtasia recorder. And let me move you in here. And 1 second, where's my Camtasia? And let me make sure that I'm recording the right screen and pushing the recording buttons. 50 seats. And there's Seb in the middle, showing everybody how this is done. And that's really good. I think we're hitting the limit, so I'm waving everybody. Thanks to everybody for joining today. Thank you, Seb, for being on the middle, showing how this is done. Awesome work on mimicking Seb as well. Thanks, everybody. We're going to grab a GIF animation of that one. Thank you. really cool. Good. I'm going to stop the recording of that one, and let me move in here. And that was really fast. We're getting better and better actually on this, and faster and faster taking the crew photos for sure. But today we'll start from a demo perspective with Parag around the introduction to SharePoint on-premises Microsoft Graph Connector. Really interesting topic for sure. And then we're going to talk about the Microsoft Viva Connection scenarios after that. But let's jump, Parag, on your screen and for your story.
Cool. Thank you, Vesa. Hey, everyone. My name is Parag, Senior Program Manager in Microsoft Search and Bing product team, working on a few scenarios on Microsoft Search size as well as Graph connectors. So give you a quick snapshot or the overview of what we shared earlier this month in Ignite. As most of you folks already know, that Graph Connectors is GA. It helps you bring in your third-party content into Microsoft Search ecosystem. Helps you bring content into not just search, but for intelligent discovery, Viva topics, people experience, and not to mention security and compliance inbuilt, because it's part of M365, as we all know. So. General availability. So few of our Graph connectors, which we announced last Ignite, I'm sure most of our customers have already been using it for a good 1 year and sharing good feedback with us. Number of new Graph connectors we announced private preview this Ignite. That includes SharePoint on-prem connector, which is the topic I wanted some discussion in this forum, as well as few additional. And if any of these Graph connectors in preview you see on the right side of the screen is area of your interest, I have a sign up link to participate in the private preview in the coming slide. You can, share your information, and one of our team member from Graph Connectors team will reach out to you to get more information. And the Graph Connectors in preview includes SharePoint on-prem. We'll have more discussion on that. Azure DevOps work items. We already have Azure DevOps GA. This is the addition to that, which includes work items. Then Jira, Confluence, ServiceNow catalog. We already had ServiceNow knowledge base GA, and this catalog currently is in preview. Azure DevOps wikis, CSV connector, and Schoology, which is mostly for our education space customers. So the number of connectors in preview. Would love to get few of folks from this forum submit the nomination, so we can work with you and bring you into a private preview. Now, talking about SharePoint on-prem connector, as we have been most of the customers already using cloud hybrid search to get this hybrid environment set up to make your on-prem SharePoint content searchable from on-prem or from SharePoint Online. But with the Graph Connectors, we're taking it to next stage where you can bring your on-prem content into this whole ecosystem of Graph Connectors, where the content will not just participate in search, but it will also participate in some advanced features like Viva topics and the discoverability and all the new features which our team is working on or showed preview during this Ignite. What we support in SharePoint on-prem Graph Connectors today, if you have no plans of moving your on-prem SharePoint content to cloud in, let's say, next 2 to 3 years timeframe, we would suggest you to give it a try and start thinking about how you will move the the content or index it through this SharePoint on-prem Graph Connector into cloud and use all the advanced capabilities of search and Viva. Here is the link to participate in the private preview, aka MS/Graph Connector preview. And the capabilities we currently support is if you have SharePoint on-prem environment 2013, 16, 19, all three supported. This connector is specifically on-prem agent-based. So you have a agent framework or agent kind of installer which you install in your local environment. Then it talks to basically our cloud components and help you crawl the SharePoint on-prem servers and help you ingest the data from your on-prem or basically ingest the index to our online system. We support exclusion list. We support ECL, so all the permissions set for your on-prem content will be respected in your online search scenarios. We support basic and Windows Auth at this point, and making providing support for more auth scenarios as we as I speak in coming weeks. And it's part of M365 Graph Connector ecosystem, so secure and compliant by design. Currently it's the way we are working in private preview is you submit your information in the sign up form, which I shared the link. aka MS/Graph Connectors preview. We enable this particular connector for your tenant, and then once it's enabled, it will be available in your data sources. Once you go to Admin Center, Search Intelligence/Data Sources, you will see this new connector showing up here, which is called SharePoint. And from there, it's the regular admin screens where you provide the source information, ECL permissions, and what all you want to crawl, and exclusion list and things like that. And after that, you create you provide the modern result types, you create vertical, and then it starts showing up in your SharePoint Online, Office.com, and Microsoft Search and Bing search experiences. At high level, a little bit information about how this overall architecture is working. So here is your source on-prem agent. As I said, it's an on-prem agent-based system. Agent will be installed locally on your server or VM if you want to create in your environment, which has information how to do the crawling for your source system and talk to our online system in Graph Connector service, which helps you in crawling and ingesting and basically coordinating the ingestion part. And then it puts information in Substrate, and from there it appears in your search experiences. So that's all I have in my presentation, I do not have any, any demos at this point, but would love to get information to, help you folks try it out. So please submit that information in the nomination form, and I'll share that link if Brian has not already done that. So thank you so much. I appreciate the time and looking forward for your participation.
Thank you, Parag. Yeah, we shared the link already in the chat. One question, Parag, related on the supported versions. So latest version of SharePoint Server on premises is actually SharePoint Server Subscription Edition, which was released 2 months ago, which is based on SharePoint 2019. I guess that's supported, but it wasn't mentioned on the slides, and slide might be outdated. So there was a question related on that.
Correct. So subscription edition, my team is still, working on few of the last components on it. So likely in a month time, it will, we'll have support for that. But at this point, if, our customers want to give it a try in next 1 month, I would say 2013, 16, and 19, but likely starting January, we'll have support for subscription edition as well.
That is all that was expected. I think that was the only pending question. And then that was my comment actually, that there was a lowercase p on the picking of a SharePoint. So the point is with a capital P. But again, it's in preview, so it's okay. Let's get it fixed.
Thank you.
So. Cool. Then I guess we'll take over from here. So thank you, Parag, on that one. And then we'll move into the second demo of the day, which apparently is me and Waldek. Waldek, are you good? Ready to go?
Yes.
You have the slides?
Yes, all of them. No.
Okay.
All 2 of them.
Okay. So, okay, let me share my screen. No, sorry, putting it on the spot. So we've been going through the extending of Microsoft Viva Connections learning path, which is available from the Microsoft Learn. If you go HTTPS or HTTP AKMS M365 Dev and Learn, you will find the extend Microsoft Viva Connection. And that really is focusing on 3 different topics. It focuses on extending the Viva connection from a web part perspective, from a application customizer perspective, and then using the adaptive card extensions. So relatively simple scenarios and simple implementation style, but actually super powerful. So it really shows how to get started from a scratch and from nothing, and understanding what you can do as a starting point. And then, of course, you can extend from there using the documentation and tooling and hands-on labs and samples and all of that what is available. So within the past 2 weeks, we've been going through the first, we did AC, so adaptive card extensions, then we did web parts, and now we're going to the application customizers. And that's basically the last piece from this learning path. And then next time we'll talk about something else again, but not from this learning path. So what we basically have already agreed with the cloud advocates like Waldek is that we'll start covering more and more learning paths in this Tuesday call, because it's beneficial for community to know and see this also actually in demos as well. Now, first of all, just a reminder, Viva Connections Toolkit is already generally available. So that was released a few weeks actually before Ignite, and then a week after Ignite, which is a bit of a weird timing, the Viva Connection mobile went GA as well. So Viva Connection is already completely GA'd and available for anybody to take advantage, and no additional license is needed. So the Viva Connection is basically a capability where you are exposing the corporate communicational intranet or the SharePoint inside of the mobile and a desktop, and potentially a tablet scenarios. Now, from these scenarios, from these 3 different or 2 different main kind of differences, there are few differences. So there's three different extensibility options. So you can use web parts, application customizers, and adaptive card extensions. Adaptive card extensions are for the mobile experiences, and those are being rendered in a native mobile way, using the native mobile framework. So it's super fast and it's targeted for mobile usage. Now, the web parts and application customizers, these are similar kind of things what we've been having in the SharePoint in the past as well. So we're building on an existing extensibility model. So if you've done application customizers or web parts in SharePoint Online, you will know how to do them, of course, in the Viva Connections as well. Good. So learning objective of today. So we will go through basically the learning path, the learn module, because learn path is all of the 4 different modules, and today we're going to use one module. When we're going to actually go through how to extend the Viva Connection desktop with the application customizers. So application customizers can be used in the Viva Connection desktop experience, but not in the mobile experience, because mobile experience is all about adaptive cards. So we're going to create and deploy and test the custom application customizer in the Viva Connection desktop throughout. Now, quick introductions. So basically, after the Viva Connection has been enabled, that's, by the way, also covered in the learning path, how to enable Viva Connection, what do you need to do, enabling the global navigation, settings in tenant admin, how do you deploy the stuff in the Teams admin UX. After that has been then enabled, you might want to actually extend the Viva Connection in a way that you want to actually inform, for example, employees with some data or information or notification. And typical scenario for application customizer, especially if it's a visual application customizer, would be something that we want to have a reminder for employees that there's an important company announcement or something to follow up. And you want that to be visible for every single employee all the time until they will basically click and do whatever is being asked them to do. Application customizers could be used on that. So how would we actually then do this? So first of all, the Viva Connection desktop experience is backed by SharePoint. Nowadays, you will see us talk about more and more Viva Connections because, hey, it's a cooler name than SharePoint. Don't quote me on that. But still, it's one of the kind of a repositioning where Viva is being promoted more, and the SharePoint is still in the contact site and content services behind the scenes. We're using basically a SharePoint home site, which is the one which is being then exposed through Viva Connection desktop inside of your Microsoft Teams application. So making sure that you can easily access the information directly from desktop or from the mobile experience. And as noted out already there, application customizers only work within the Viva Connection desktop experience. They won't show up in a mobile Viva Connection app. So good to be aware of that. Again, the mobile application only supports adaptive card type rendering. So that's really important to understand. Now, application customizers don't have to have a UI. So they might be something like you want to have, for example, let's say Google Analytics or some other analytics tooling, which is tracking the user view. Google Analytics is quite typical scenario for this stuff. To be fair, there is a free similar kind of version coming from Microsoft as well, which is, what is it called, Waldek?
I know what you mean. I have it.
Yeah, exactly. This is the moment when we should be promoting our own company products.
Yeah.
You know, not Google Analytics, the better one.
Not App Insights. It's also, it's another thing.
Okay.
No,
Anyway.
not App Insights.
Not App Insights,
we'll look it up.
Cool. Now, but for that scenario, so that would be a good example of we want to embed something analytic scripts on the pages to analyze what's happening, and then there's no UX which we're rendering. Now, application customizers can actually have also UI elements, so they can actually claim positions on the UI, which is being exposed inside of the Microsoft Teams as a Viva Connection. And right now, we've been waiting for get more placeholders quite a long time. It is still in works, but right now we still have one placeholder in top, one placeholder in bottom. So basically a kind of a header section and then a lower footer section where you can embed extensibility on that side. And thank you, Christian. It is Microsoft Clarity. You are absolutely correct on that. Thank you for helping us. See, as a Microsoft employee, I guess we should know about this stuff, but hey,
you cannot know everything. You cannot know everything.
Now, for the application customizer, as a developer, we define the position of an application customizer. And this is really the big difference between application customizer and extensions versus the web parts. So the web parts are being modified and configured and adjusted by the content editors. Application customizers are something which is being looked kind of hooked or locked in the site in a certain shape or a form, and the end users cannot get rid of them. So they're basically locked in from that perspective. They're actual code, so it's a developer experience. Now, you might actually think about this if you think about SharePoint Framework extensions, that what's the difference, for example, these extensions versus some of the configuration options, what you can do in the lists, because extensions technically not just if you step away from the application customizers, you can do list level customizations. But the difference is really the fact that when it's SharePoint framework, it's code and it's developer created, developer associated, not end user or site editor configurable. So that's where the differences really are. And editors cannot get rid of them as such because they're basically locked to be available on the site. Now, site administrator configure application customizers potentially, so there might be limited configuration capabilities. There are a few different options how to make this happen, either centrally from the tenant scoped or then in the site level. Now, in general, a recommendation is that you would build application customers if you want to add code to all pages in the Viva Connection desktop experience. So something which is visible all the time. It could be like a header master navigation. If you don't like the out-of-the-box one, it could be a master footer. It could be a notification. It could be something which is detecting that, hey, you're the person who's located in this particular location and you should be doing X and Y and Z today. Go there and make that happen. Just the reminders, personalized reminders, for example, in the Viva desktop experience. Or you haven't actually completed your mandatory training. That happens actually a lot in the Microsoft. We're getting those reminders all the time. At least I do, because I never remember to do them. So a reminder for me to actually follow up on those trainings. Now let's actually create one of these from scratch. We do have nicely timed today. So I will start actually from clean command line and we'll move into the right location. Let me pump up the font a bit and let me go to my PnP location. Everybody has a PnP location, right?
Of course
you do. Yeah, and let me actually start from here. Let me quick shuffle things so I can see the code which Waldek has written. I'm just executing his code, so it makes me feel that I'm actually capable of writing code on the fly. Am I?
Oh yeah, and
I
guess for
away?
me it is an ultimate test. Like, can I write code that anybody else can run?
Yes, or I
Will
can
it run.
There's a
different
yes.
than mine.
Can a PM run your code? Now, basically what I'm doing here is that I'm running Human Generator, which is the creation of our SharePoint framework or Viva Connection project. So we start the creation of our project structure. And let's actually use the values what our documentation is giving us to use. So I'm going to use an SPFX company announcement application customizer as the solution name. And then it's going to ask me, this is a relatively stupid question right now because, and we're going to drop it into 1.14 version, but we only support SharePoint Online anymore with Human Generator. You will need to use an older version of Human Generator if you're targeting SharePoint 2016, 2019 or subscription edition. So we're going to use that one. And we're going to use current folder because I already went to the folder where I want this to be created. And then for these, we're not going to deep dive on the settings, but basically we're not going to have a tenant deployed and not unique API permissions. So not a super security, but a normal security level still. We're going to create an extension and we're going to create an application customizer and we're going to give it a name like something meaningful. Technically, this is not visible from the UX because again, a developer makes the decision where the application customizer is being placed. So the UX doesn't really matter that much, or these descriptions doesn't matter that much, but hey, it's good to have them in the package. Now it's going to create the solution. It's going to create the package and for us. And as it's doing that, let's actually have a look on the setup. So if you followed up on the last 2 weeks on our journey on implementing and doing extensibility with Viva Connections. So first of all, we have here relatively simple Viva Connection layout. So we have a Contoso personalized logo and a name. So you can personalize the Viva Connection based on your company. And then we're using super simple communication sites as a starting point, but we have enabled the dashboard here already. And we have actually one announcement list which is created for just mimicking information which could be important for the employees. So we have one completely mandatory training information available and then another news. Now, if I go back in the home, we can see that we have the ACE, which we have implemented in here, ACE being the adaptive card extension component. which could be then exposed using the mobile experience. And then we have a custom web part, which is visible here as well. Now, today we're going to create an application customizer. Again, if you're super familiar with SharePoint framework, there's nothing really unique or new in here, except that now we're inside of the Microsoft Teams, which makes that then as a Viva connection experience. So, and the cool thing about all of this one, again, just to recap, there's no license cost, no nothing. You can just embed the SharePoint online portals and modern portals directly in here. This doesn't look actually super impressive, but again, if you're looking into doing a super impressive portals, I would still recommend using the SharePoint lookbook. And there from here, you could use something like the perspective as a starting point, and then enable that to be the welcome page, and then add the desktop, the Viva connection dashboard and all of those experiences in here. But let's go back on our boring site. We should have actually made it a bit more flashy. Maybe not. The flashiness is always, it might be confusing as well. Now, let me go back on the command line. We can see that our solution has been created, and let me actually open up a Visual Studio Code, and we'll start doing some coding. Well, actually not, because remember to read the manual. The manual says that we need to run one npm install command. So let me go back in command line, and let me add a SP Office UI Fabric core. So I won't be wondering why isn't it working afterwards. See, reading the manual.
So why do we need that?
So we're going to use this one for styling purposes. As we're rendering UX level information, we will take advantage of styling elements from the SP Office UI Fabric core. It gives us a styling colors and style definitions, which we will use in our implementation. And what's happening here
why
is
isn't it? And why isn't it available already for us?
So why isn't all of these available already? It's not available because we want to make sure that if we're not using that, we do not increase the page size. So basically, we want to make sure that the package and the JavaScript component, which comes out of transcompiling the TypeScript, is as minimal as possible. So when people are accessing the page, for example, through the Microsoft Teams and from other areas, it will not be critical. Well, it will not be too big. Now I got confused because I'm reading the critical the messages there. Now, by the way, on these things, that's actually a good point for just from Eric. Every now and then you might see this. We are of course closely following up on this. Quite often, as you're seeing, for example, in this case, the three critical, these are not critical in runtime. So they would be critical in runtime if we would be running server-side code, but not when we are running client-side code after transcompiling the TypeScript to JavaScript. And those are the kind of the differences. And these are really hard to do kind of a spot and understand. But from our side, from Microsoft side, we're of course following up on what's happening in npm, which is, by the way, owned by Microsoft nowadays as well, which is pretty cool. Now, or GitHub, but then Microsoft owns GitHub, so it's complicated. Cool. Now we are actually in the Visual Studio Code. I'm watching the time. We have plenty of time, so this is good. So no rush today. So we already have the basic setup.
Has words.
Exactly, that I know always happens. So no rushing and then running out of time. Now, what we basically have here is a SharePoint framework solution and a basic layout and a structure and a baseline setup for application customizer. And we're going to a bit modify this one. So we will basically make it available and more structural and make those placeholders. So we're going to put a header placeholder on the page as we're rendering the page inside of the Viva connection. So I'm going to follow up on the guidance. I'm going to modify the SP application page. We're going to take placeholder content and placeholder name from there. And those are needed as we're pointing out to a location in a page. And we're going to render some JavaScript in there. And then we want to access the information from SharePoint online. So I'm going to add a additional import, which is SP HTTP client in here. And then we're going to start actually a bit of implementing the code. So inside of my class, that's my actual class. That's the actual TypeScript implementation of my application customizer. I'm going to add an internal variable so we can then store the top placeholder in here pretty soon in the code. We're going to actually add a onInit, or we're going to modify the onInit a bit. So there's our onInit, which right now it is showing a dialog with hello world on something. That's not super interesting. So let's actually modify the onInit completely. So we're going to actually add a change event add render placeholders. And this is basically making sure that whenever we're moving across to different UX elements and partially loading the pages, our render placeholders is getting rendered properly. And what we then need is the actual render placeholder. So let me actually grab that one from the code and paste that one in. That was a super fast implementation of the code.
So fast.
Yes. Nobody was able to even see that coming. Now, what we can see here, let's have a quick look on what's actually happening here. And what are we actually doing here is that we are taking an instance of the top placeholder. So there's in the HTML structure, in the page structure, there's a location where we can inject our custom experience. That's what we're doing here. If for whatever reason it is not found, we're just logging an exception on the browser console. As we found it, or when we found it, we're actually calling an REST API from the announcement list and finding a news where the important field equals 1. So basically a news article where it is important enough to actually get shown for the end users. And then as we get that announcements to be available, we're adding a implementation or LILUL HTML structures based on that information. Now, something what we can see actually here already is that we can't find styles. And this is basically what's still missing. We took a dependency on that Office UI Fabric element, but we didn't actually implement anything with that. So let's actually go back in on the solution structure, and let me create one new file in this folder. And there we go. And let's name that as an important company announcement SCSS. What is that shortening for? I can't never remember that.
SAS. It's SAS.
Yeah, but what does the SAS actually mean in English? Never mind. Okay, fine.
What does it mean in English? It's just a word.
It's DML has a actual word behind of the
cascading style sheets.
Yeah, CSS.
Yes,
but then SCSS. Yes. Anyway,
sassy CSS.
Sassy CSS. Okay, there we go. Good. So that's good to know. So that's what it is. Now, what we're doing here basically is that we're defining the styles for the components as we're getting rendered for these sassy components as they're getting rendered in the UX. And now we have the definition of the style, and then in the code we will still need to get an import to that style. So I'm actually add an import on this page. So, and that basically means that we will get that one into use. Did I name that actually properly? Yes, I did. So it's just not yet compiled, so I can't find it. So that's fine. That should be okay. Even though it's actually doing that, as we start bundling stuff, it can find what's available. Now, what we can do now is that we can actually start testing. I'm just double checking that I saved everything, because that's my always the thing. Why isn't that working? Well, you didn't save the file. So what I'm going to now do is that I'm going to write here serve -- no browser. There's a few ways of doing this. Now we could actually do here a configuration options as well and launch options. So actually from here, how we're testing this extension. There's a few different ways of doing that. We're going to do this in a super simplistic way, where we're going to actually not double. What am I doing? There we go. When your keyboard doesn't have characters in it, you never know what's going to hit. So additional complexity, making it easy for yourself.
Level 2.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is that we want to basically test out this component in a live page. So we're rendering that from a local host, and we're going to test it out from a live page. So I'm going to actually start a notepad. We're going to do a bit of a modification here. In the guidance, it actually says, now again, there's a few different ways of doing that. We could actually go to the serve JSON, and we could have been actually doing this not using the let's say classic URL manipulation. But it says that go to the home ASPX page, and then you need to update this ID accordingly so that it will actually start loading whatever we have in the local host. Where do we get that ID? Well, we get the ID actually from our application customizer definition. So this is the manifest file of our component, and that's the unique ID. GUIDs are actually not unique, but that's a separate discussion. Let's not actually go there, but they're quite unique, but they're not completely unique.
What does that stand the U in GUID for?
Yeah, it's actually this dance that
Unique.
it would be unique, but it's not actually. There's an interesting studies on that, so how they're actually being resolved. So they're
What
not
are the odds
technically
for someone else
unique.
to have the same one, right?
Yeah. Now I'm going to save. I'm not going to save that, so that's no reason to doing that. I manipulated the URL, and let's actually go back in our browser, and let me go on the SharePoint side of the house, so we can actually see the same page without the Teams shell. So we can more easily actually then extend this URL. So what I'm doing is that I'm pasting that massively long URL, which in practice says, hey, SharePoint, as you're loading the home ASPX page, and there's a debug manifest available from localhost temp manifest JSON file. Please load that, and there should be a component called that ID. And that's what actually is happening here. And as we start loading that, we're telling SharePoint that, hey, you should load the local host. And it's then SharePoint is basically, hey, are you sure that you want to do this? And in this case, as we know what we're doing, we can click load debug script. If you do not know what you're doing, click here. That's a super descriptive answer. But something has happened on the page. And as we can see, I was able to successfully copy paste the code from the material.
Achievement
I'm not going to
unlocked.
claim that I'm not going to claim that I wrote the code. Is that we actually have completed your mandatory training by December 1st. Is as a reminder here. Of course, it could have a link to the training. It could have something else and a more complex scenario available. But technically, it is now loading the same entry as this web part from the announcement is loading. From the lists, and it's exposing that in the top header. It could be much more complex, but in this case, quite simple headers definition. Good, so that's working, awesome. So how do we now get this one then deployed? Well, it's not actually too hard. That's the beauty of the SharePoint framework, because everything is auto-hosted. Microsoft 365 is hosting everything for you. So let me actually go back in the command line. That's a command line. This is a command line. So I'm going to terminate my patch job. I'm going to do some cleaning. And we're going to do collab bundle-ship. And that's going to basically transcompile, which is a fancy word, but basically it's the TypeScript is getting now transformed to be JavaScript, which then the browsers understand. So that the browser doesn't have to do any runtime transformation of the TypeScript. So TypeScript is a developer time experience. JavaScript is the output from that TypeScript. And then that's now basically getting ready. And my assets are available to get deployed. They're actually in that dist folder over there. We're not going to, no point actually opening up but that one. But now I'm going to do call package solution, and that's the ship it. And that's going to then take the dist information and my solution definition and everything else and create that to be an SPPKG file, which we last time already said, SPPKG file, which is now named in here. It's actually a zip file, but it's so much cooler to name it as an SPPKG file rather than a zip file. So
exactly, and have your own extension, right?
Of course.
Because zip is so
That's
boring.
really cool. So now if I go and open up my file explorer, in my 4K screen, so that is a pretty. I can't even zoom it in the right level. Can I? There we go. Okay, here we go. Now you can probably say something in the follow solution structure. From here, I can go to the SharePoint. Now it's again small.
Oh yeah, right.
And we can see my SPPKG file available for me to get it installed. So the cool thing again, I can send that to anybody in email that they can just install that to their tenant, and it actually works as long as the list is available.
Attachment blocked.
Yeah, in this case it would be indeed attachment blocked, but again, now let's get that one installed to the tenant. Thank you, Waldek, for keeping me honest. So let me go my SharePoint Online app catalog, which luckily is getting modernized, and this is so outdated, but basically it's an administrative operation, so it hasn't been yet got too much love, but it's going to get more love in the future. Now, or there's people actually already working on the modernization on all of this. Now, this is the app catalog. for SharePoint Online and for Viva Connection, because again, behind of the Viva Connection, we're using SharePoint Online as the engine. At some point, you might actually have maybe Viva Connection app catalog, an abstraction of this, and a few things. There's some interesting designs and plans in the roadmap for all of this, but let's not go too much detail yet on that because things have not yet been decided. So I'm going to install that component, SVPKG file, which is actually a zip file, but hey, and to my tenant, we're going to drag and drop that to the app catalog. It's going to then prompt that, hey, so you need to be administrator, you need to understand, don't just take random examples from the internet and just put it in your tenant running.
What's wrong with that?
To the tenant. There we go. Yes, why is that? Just take the JavaScript file and put it in your tenant. What's wrong with that? Now, as we can see, that's the component, and we can see that it's deployed. And more importantly, there was no package errors, so we're basically good to go. So now we're going to install that to our site. So let me go back in the SharePoint site. I will go to site contents. We already see two components being installed, which are actually, can we actually get the full name? No, we can't. It says ACE client-side component, and this one says web part client-side component. But now I can add the third one, which says the application customizer. So I'm going to add an application. Now, this is actually really good. So we're hitting this because there's a cached entry related on the local host definition, which we were playing around in here. So this might happen. But this is a bit of a annoying thing. Let me go back in the home.
So it's like in our docs, we have instruction to turn it off.
Yes, you do. But I forgot about doing that. So the easiest way to actually clear that is add a parameter reset equals true. And in the docs, it actually says that, but I skipped that. So I didn't, why would you read
and
the
that is what you get.
Exactly. Then you get surprises. Luckily, I've seen this one before. So now let me do this one more time. Let me go new and add an app. There we go. Now it's working properly. I can go to from my organization, which basically shows those applications which are available from my app catalog directly, not just from a SharePoint store. I could access the SharePoint store from here as well. And the one which has not yet been added is the application customizer one. I'm going to add that to the site. Adding successfully, and if I now go to the site contents, we can actually see that we have 3 of them now installed. But more importantly, wow, there's our awesome customizer available. Because again, the application customizer renders in all of the pages. So it doesn't matter if you are inside of the list experience. Wow. It doesn't matter if you're in site contents or if you're in pages. Wow. Wow. Okay. We need to have a look on that. Now I'm confused. Or in the homes, we can actually see that the application customizer is getting rendered properly, and because that's the intention. It is all the time available and getting rendered on the pages. Now we're still in SharePoint, but where's the Viva connection? Well, now if we go to the Microsoft Teams site, and I'm going to use the browser again, simplicity, because I mean, my desktop is in the session right now. We're recording the session, so I can't use that. And if we refresh the page, we can see that, of course, the application customizer is getting rendered in the Microsoft Teams with the Viva Connection experience and Viva Connection extensibility here as well. So you, as a customer or as a partner, you design what's available, what's visible in the Viva Connection, which is, by the way, a cool partner opportunity as well. So you can start designing different kind of experiences and then industry-based experiences, which are then being exposed through the Viva Connection in the Microsoft Teams. Technically, there's ways even to have multiple ones of this. So you could have a one which is Contoso and then Contoso Sales as a second one. So there's multiple different opportunities available for people. Now, the developer tenant, by the way, does not require any premium license. Developer tenant is just free for everybody. It's E5 and easy to get this started. I think that's it. Did I miss any questions, Waldek? You've been answering some of them.
I answered all of them. They wanted to know everything.
They wanted to know everything. Okay, cool. So let me go back on the slides. I think we have a few slides in this one still. So basically what we did in here, before we close up on the sign, we created a new solution. We created the application customizer, we tested out, and we deployed that to the tenant. And again, the cool thing about SharePoint Framework, hopefully being renamed something else pretty soon, is that it's automatically hosted inside of Microsoft 365. So there wasn't really complexity on the deployment of that elements. So a component of complexity on deployment of the solution as such. Now, of course, just to summary that one. Now the person is happy. So finally, he is convinced after 3 of these sessions. Clearly,
About
super
time.
happy with with how we can extend the Viva Connection desktop with the application customizer. It does not work in the mobile experience, so you cannot actually use that in there because again, the mobile experience is for adaptive card rendering options. And today we did the deployment and testing application customizer in the Viva Connection desktop. There's a few different ways of again doing that. So we did it with a debug URL manipulation directly. There's a documentation how to do it from the serve.json as well. Again, matter of opinion how those are being done. But that's all what we're gonna do within this demo. So let me actually jump back on this one and do F5 in here. And I guess we are starting to be all done today. So just a recap on the thank you, Parag, on a great demo related on introduction on SharePoint on-premises Microsoft Graph Connector. Really cool stuff as well. It's good to say that it's available. And again, the people in this call, please sign up for the preview. So the URL will be in the blog post notes after this call as well. It was mentioned in the chat, but those who are watching the video might be wondering where can I access that URL. That is in the blog post related on this recording. And then we did the second demo related on extending Viva Connection with application customizers. And that was the last one related on Viva Connection learning path. And we're going to have some other topics in the upcoming weeks as well. We have a lot of developer community calls available. So this one is the Tuesday, 8 a.m. every single Tuesday. We will actually run through this call, the Tuesday call, throughout the holiday season as well. But some of the calls will be transformed to be more as a, hey, join us on a coffee, sharing a coffee and a tea. So if you have questions, we're more than happy to answer your questions. So there won't be live demos. So don't feel bad about it if you can't make those calls. And of course, in general, check out the agenda in social media, and then you can decide, do you want us to come to the call or do you want to see the recording? A lot of other calls available as well, and other assets, and you find them all from AKMS M365 BMP. And recording will be available in 24 hours in the YouTube channel. You cannot, as an external person, you can't access the recording directly from the Microsoft Teams, and that is a limitation in the Microsoft Teams. So that's why everything is getting published always in the YouTube channel. The next Microsoft 365 platform call is in the 13th of November. It is pretty soon December, which is pretty wild. Now, I have to comment, the one comment related on the renaming of the SPFX. So there's a ongoing discussions on that. We do not have an ETA on that one, but again, SharePoint Framework is being used already in so many areas rather than just SharePoint. It makes sense to rename that as well. But that's pretty much all what we're going to do today. So thank you everybody for joining. We're hitting the 60-minute marker as well. Thank you for the call. Thank you, Parag, for the great demo as well. And please keep the feedback coming, and we'll be back within the community calls, actually Thursdays this week, where we have really cool demos available as well. But thanks everybody. Let's stay in touch.